And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 8 o'clock this evening. This extended show as we bring you live commentary of Leinster's game away to Leicester in the Heineken Champions Cup quarterfinals. But for now, as always, Football Saturday. Remember, football and Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Don't miss Manchester City versus Newcastle United on Super Sunday, live only on Sky Sports. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball. We're streaming the conversation. Listen on News Talk. Watch us on the digital and social channels for Periscope on Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app for iOS and Android. Search OTB Sports, your app store to download it if you haven't already. Joined by the former Republic of Ireland international Damien Delaney, UEFA Pro Licence coach Shane Keegan, and the football correspondent of the Irish Independent Dan McDonnell to talk about the beautiful game. Just going to do a shout out to listeners first about valuable football memorabilia. So Maradona's Hand of God shirt went for over 7 million quid this week. Do you have anything valuable you think is priceless that you'd never flog, or that you are suddenly thinking about selling? 53106, the text number, for a cost of 30 cents. Damien, I was watching you on Virgin TV on the Champions League coverage during the week. Yeah. Manchester City, like, you've had a bit of time to think about it now. How did it happen? What's your thoughts?
Like I suppose I said it on the TV that, like, you always look at a coach and you talk about collapsing, and the point I was trying to make was that, like, I'm not sure, yes, they conceded 2 goals, but if you look back, what did Pep do wrong? Like, what substitutions would you change? People were saying, oh, we should have left De Bruyne on. Did De Bruyne have a good game? I don't think so. Gundogan came on, Grealish came on. He didn't go ultra defensive. He didn't give up any part of the game. I remarked after 85 minutes how impressed it was with City's handling of the game. They were in complete control. And it was just 2 quick-fire goals. Just came out of nothing, just 2 crosses in the box. And this Madrid team do that. So that's why I didn't want to clarify it as a collapse, because I believe a collapse is when you make some poor substitutions, give up the foothold that you had in the game as a result of those substitutions, and you invite pressure on you. No, they didn't handle extra time really, with Ruben Diaz making that challenge. I suppose on reflection, you're kind of thinking, what would Manchester City, or what could Manchester City have done differently? I suppose one thing, and I know it's easy sitting here with hindsight, is that when the first goal went in, I almost felt that some Manchester City players should take it upon themselves just to go down and take 2-3 minutes off the clock for, like, there was 6 minutes injury time added on, and just go down, get the stretcher on, go off, like Militao did in extra time, come back on and go straight back down again, and take 3 minutes off that clock, because you could have done it. Because I think with the result of what you saw against with PSG and Chelsea, they're capable of going bang, bang very, very quickly. And I suppose that's in hindsight, and maybe that's, being ultra, people would say it's cheating, we complain about this all the time, but realistically they needed to turn that 6 minutes into 2 minutes of game time with the ball actually being in play. So that's probably the only thing I criticise them with. I don't think Pep Guardiola did anything wrong. I look back over all the substitutions. They were reasonable, they were logical, they made sense. They had complete control of the game, and just bang, goal out of nothing, and then another one. So it looks like a collapse, and a lot of people can term it that as if they want, but I don't think it was a collapse. I just think sometimes you have to hold your hands up and you got beat by a better team.
What do the players, you played at the top level, Damien, what must they be feeling? Are they able to just put it behind them and play against Newcastle tomorrow? What does the footballer's mind work like in these situations?
Disbelief, I think, initially. You'd come in afterwards and you almost go into like a dream-like state, where you're thinking, is this actually real? Has this actually happened? But very, very quickly you realise it has. And these guys are all ultra-professional, top professionals, really, really at the peak of their game, mentally, incredible mental strength. They don't make it to that level without bouncing back from adversity, because at some point all those players would have experienced adversity. I listened to an interview with Pep yesterday. I think he gave them 2 days off by the sounds of it. He said the first time we'll reconvene and see them will be on Saturday. And I think that's wise. Let the players go home, clear their heads themselves with their families. It's not like the old days where if you gave lads 2 days off after a defeat like that, they'd drink their troubles away. I just think they just let those guys go away and let it marinate in their minds themselves, and they'll all figure out. They're all incredibly smart people. They'll all figure out the best way to deal with it, process it, and let it go and refocus.
Dan, I was looking at Miguel Delaney's tweet there after the game. Of Guardiola's 11 Champions League eliminations, 8 have seen decisive periods that were sudden collapses, flurries of goals conceded. 2010, 2 and 13 minutes. 2014, 3 and 18. 2015, 3 and 17. 2017, 2 and 8. 2018, 3 and 19. 2019, 2 and 3. 2020, 2 and 8. 2022, 3 and 6. What I took from that was this is a brilliant computer, a brilliant plane, but when it malfunctions, there's a bit of a freeze, and then these patterns emerge.
Yeah, and I suppose sometimes, people have their views on stats or trends. You can have that in all sports, and what do they mean? Do they mean anything? And if we all just sort of put down things in football matches, that's just one of those things. Talk shows and discussion shows wouldn't exist. Everything is very easily.
We wouldn't be here.
Very easily explained, and you can always, and you can also use the scoreboard like to find an argument to suit what's happened. Like I did think in the previous round, I thought there was a small bit of an overreaction to City doing the job against Atleti. I think I actually thought they gave up some I know they gave up some chances in that game. I know they faced they sort of did some of the time wasting, and when they do it and it finishes 0-0, it's like, well, or whatever score they got to get the job done. It's like, well, there they go. They've toughened it up. They've got the resolve. But even when Atletico went down to 10, they actually had a chance. At the end of the game, it just wasn't taken. And if that had been scored, it would have been a completely different discussion. And that's always the way. It's.
So if Grealish scores, Grealish is a hero. The 100 million was worth it. They're in the final.
Yeah, I think I sort of would be closer to Dano's view on it. I think they actually did they played it quite well. I actually thought it would have been the classic sort of, if Grealish scores, either of the two chances that he was involved in on the breaks, it would have been a classic. Well, there you go. They got their goal, got a bit stretched, they finished it off, clinical, efficient, and there are all the words you would have used. Now, the flip side of that is that in some ways, I think the treatment of City afterwards has been reasonably kind as well too. I mean, if PSG had done that, it would have been sort of mirth, and the entire character of every player would have been torn asunder as well. So the truth always lies somewhere in between the two. And to go back to your original point, I think there have been Pep malfunctions along the way. There is no doubt about that. Some more obvious than others. But I am sort of struggling. If a team loses, you can always find something. But to me, it's harder to find something they've done here where they let it go, other than just the obvious. When you concede the first goal, I think is that I know obviously the need was such that Madrid had to go again, but was that the time even to try and find a way to kill it a bit or something?
Slow it down, yeah.
Yeah, well, of course, the stadium was, it's easy to say this here.
Oh, the stadium was coming through the TV.
Yeah, the stadium was fired and they had to go for it, and maybe it's easy to say that. What could they have done? Tip it off and just belt it 60 yards to the corner flag, like QPR against Man City back in the day with the sort of famous Aguero goal. It's easy to say that, but Pep has to accept that with his profile, he's going to face all these psychoanalysis on the basis of what happened.
Almost a passive aggressiveness about Pep in his press conference, saying, Keegan, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm just not good enough now. That's what he was saying. But does his legacy deserve reassessment? He still hasn't won it without Messi and his team. He's a brilliant manager. They've been incredible. I love watching them. I wish they got to the final personally. But what do you put it down to?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I would have loved to have seen them make the final, is the first thing I'd say, JD. And look, I know Dan was saying that the media seem to have been reasonably kind to them. Needless to say, social media is never quite as kind as the real media is. And I'm just, that groundswell of, I'm delighted for Pep. He thinks he's cleverer than all the rest of us, and he got his comeuppance. That drives me mad. I really hate when I see that kind of stuff. He's been such a fantastic manager. He's been such a fantastic person for the game of football over the last 10 to 15 years. Why anybody would take, satisfaction? Oh, if the satisfaction is aimed at the ownership, I get that a little bit more. But the satisfaction in seeing Pep flop and Pep, he overthinking things and he's got his weapons and all that kind of crack. I don't like that, because he's just been a joy. Any side he's been over has been a joy to watch for the last few years. I mean, not take out the lads too much, but I've been in this, I've been in those situations where you can feel something getting away from you, and you just, I can think of one situation where it didn't happen and one situation where it did, where you are praying or trying to communicate out to your players, somebody hit the ground here, somebody go down, grab your groin, grab your hamstring, grab whatever you need to grab, just to let everybody gather their thoughts, management included. The manager needs to be able to gather his thoughts, and they were crying out for somebody to do that when the first goal went in, JD. They really, really were. As I say, they've give Pep as much as anybody else a chance to say, okay, right, not the end of the world here. Here's what we need to do. But when you get caught up in the momentum of the stadium and sugar, we're up against it here now, or it's all collapsing on us, just gets away from you. It just gets away from you. It really does. The other thing, just to pick up on one of the points that Damien made is, and this is where I'd be, and this is just purely down, I suppose, to management styles or even your own thinking styles. With Kevin De Bruyne, I would be, my take on it is, I would be of the opinion time and time again, whether involved in a match or watching a match, that if a fella has consistently delivered for you over a prolonged period, when he's having an off game, I would be inclined to stick with him. It's just the way my mind would work. I'd be inclined to say, okay, he's had a bad 70 here, but the man is absolutely class. I'm going to trust him. I'm going to leave him on the field. I think he's going to come up with something for us. I mean, I would have looked at the hurling last weekend and shook my head at TJ Reid being brought off, and I would have thought, no, Brian, stick with him. He always delivers. And it was the same. I felt it was the same that game. No doubts, I would agree. He was way off. He wasn't at the standard that he's usually at. I would just find it hard to believe that he would have went 90, never mind 120, without giving us some moment of inspiration. So I was surprised at that one. The 2 goals in the minute, it can happen, as I say, particularly if a player doesn't buy you a bit of time. The bit I would have been most disappointed was how they really didn't manage to reset themselves correctly for extra time. They weren't the City we would have expected. If it hadn't gone to extra time in such dramatic style, I think they might have gathered their thoughts better and might have produced the usual City performance over the half an hour that they had to correct things. I just think it all snowballed on them.
Can I just jump in there? Like, it's one thing you think with Pep Guardiola's teams, and if you compare, and we're forever comparing Liverpool and Manchester City, like Liverpool, you think of the Barcelona comeback, they have such a soul about them, and there's kind of a Klopp will just run with a feeling, whereas Guardiola, everything's thought out. And I wonder, does he hinder his players, or does he allow them that freedom of thought, that freedom of expression, because everybody has a job and it's so mapped out and it's so planned? It's just 2 different managerial styles. Liverpool are much more free-flowing, and the game can change. You saw the Villarreal game, how they wrestled back control of that. Whereas Manchester City, like you said there, I think with JD, said their robotic programming is done, and when something goes wrong, it can malfunction. Whereas Klopp is much, much different in his setup, that he can kind of roll with those punches a bit better. But again, that's just managerial styles.
I think it doesn't show like the Liverpool one. They had the 15 minutes to regroup at half time in Villarreal. I think if that first half had continued for another 10-15 minutes, like they were struggling. And I suppose this is the one thing where maybe the malfunction was for City, and the bad lads have both alluded to it there, was how, we were probably all, when it went to extra time, going, this is going to be brilliant. But actually, like, extra time wasn't really, like, it was almost like,
Real spoiled in extra time. Yeah, they slowed the clock.
They slowed it, but City were, and it's sort of what Damien's alluded to, like, they were sort of frozen. They got that punch in the gut, and they couldn't recover. And in one way, it shows how, like, the most highly driven, highest achieving athletes in the world, and it's why we sort of love the high class sport. Sometimes it's like watching the top golfers or something. It's watching them suffer sometimes as part of the intrigue, like how they were, they weren't robotic and just able to respond to it. And you could spin that and say, okay, after the 90 minutes, Pep pulls them together, and you have a little bit of time to have, and they didn't manage to sort of escape this sort of sense of horror that seemed to be sort of slowly unfolding that they couldn't avoid.
53106 BB in Bayside has been in touch from Dublin. I fully agree that the Real comeback was just one of those things, but what no one is talking about is how badly City played in extra time. Not just how utterly defeated they seemed to be for the full half hour, but also how they didn't close or pick up for the third Real goal. There was no fight back at all, no steel in the face of the setback. Would a number 9 have helped, Damien? Because they were playing hoofball at the end, but nobody to go to.
Yeah, look, over the course of the season, we have questioned it, and it's got them this far. Perhaps a number 9 would have put them in a better stead in the first leg, but It's hearsay. I mean, one thing I was interested tactically what he did is when he swapped, I think midway through the first half, he put Jesus out on the left and put Foden as a false number 9. I thought that was an interesting one. I'd like to, because Jesus started down the middle and Foden wide, and Foden became a non-entity in the game because he was just a number 9. So one of your best players has become a non-entity, and I suppose, without being disrespectful to Jesus, one of your poorer players is now involved in the game more. I mean, Jesus is a number 9 that runs in behind, and he's a nuisance. He's not technically incredible. He's obviously technically very, very proficient. It's not a criticism of him, but I would have just preferred to see Foden on the ball a little bit more. I would have probably seen Jesus up the top of the pitch and just wait for the chances. So maybe that's something he's looked at, but I was wondering why he would do that. I ran through that in my head, what he was looking for there. But I thought that made Manchester City a little less effective in my mind.
Okay, let's go to the Viva Stadium. Alan Quinlan, Munster against Toulouse, and a couple of tries already.
Yeah, there has. Munster started brilliantly, I think. They were under a little bit of early pressure. O'Mahony gets a great turnover under the post. Alex Kendall, and then Munster got upfield, got a penalty, kicked it to the corner, executed brilliantly off the line-out, and then built some pressure, and Kendall forced his way over. But right from the kick-off, John, Munster won it, played a phase, Murray box kicks. It was a good kick. I don't think the chase was very good. Toulouse picked up a loose ball and got close to the line and had a penalty, and Intermac, ball went loose on the ground, and Intermac just pops up and wivelled his way over and just got there. But Munster played very, very well. They're actually doing well with the ball. They're holding on to it well, but you can see the quality from Toulouse, the pressure they're putting at the breakdown, and the power they have. But it's 7-7 at the moment.
All right, Quinny, thanks so much. 15 minutes gone. Remember, we got commentary of Leicester 5:30. We're on air till 8 o'clock this evening on Off the Ball here on News Talk. In Scotland, Celtic 4 Hearts 1. They pretty much have wrapped up the title today, so well done to the boys. Ross County 0, Motherwell 0 in the relegation group. Hibs 0, Aberdeen 0, Livingston 0, St Johnstone 0, St Mirren 1, Dundee 0. Latest scores in the Championship. All of these games are results. Birmingham City 1, Blackburn 2, Bournemouth 1, Millwall 0, Derby 0, Cardiff 1, Huddersfield 2, Bristol City 0, so 2-0 win for Huddersfield. Hull 1, Nottingham Forest 1, Luton 1, Reading 0, Peterborough 5, Blackpool 0, Preston 4, Middlesbrough 1, Sheffield United 4, Fulham 0, Stoke 1, Coventry 1, Swansea 0, QPR 1, West Brom 4, Barnsley 0. So Fulham and Bournemouth go up automatically. Playoff spots go to Nottingham Forest, Huddersfield Town, Sheffield United and Luton Town, and relegated are Peterborough United, Derby County and Barnsley. In the Premier League, we have Aston Villa have scored 1-0 up away to Burnley, so a blow for Burnley and a boost for Leeds and Everton as they battle to survive. Danny Ings with the goal, and also it is 2-0 to Brentford against Southampton in the 3 o'clock kickoffs. Goals there from Pontus Jansson and Joanna Wissa at the Brentford Community Stadium. It's Chelsea 0, Wolves 0, and Crystal Palace 0, Watford 0. So you don't think, Damien Delaney, that in any way there'll be an anti-climax for City winning the Premier League? They'll just put it out of their minds, they'll regroup and they'll go for this and there'll be no effect?
I wouldn't say that serious. I think the players will definitely regroup. The huge disappointment. But as I said earlier, those players are incredibly mentally tough. They will, if that was in their makeup, their personalities, that, when something went wrong, they threw the towel in and gave up. They wouldn't have got to the level they got to, As I said to you, they all have experienced adversity. I think they'll quickly be able to refocus. The 2 days off will probably do them the power of good. And Pep will have them banging. And once they, win or get the first win this weekend, which I fully expect them to, then I think they'll get back on the horse really, really quickly. And, they're not going to throw a good season away because they got hit with 2 late goals against Real Madrid.
53106, Sean has been in touch. Hi lads, Klopp would win the Champions League if he was City manager and will probably win it as Liverpool manager. Is Guardiola guilty of overcoaching his players? Doesn't seem to be able to think critically at clutch points. Fact, has happened so many times to his teams in Europe in the last 10 years. Would suggest so, says Rory. Do you agree, Damien?
Yeah, it's a legitimate statement, absolutely. My thoughts on the game the other night are just on that game alone, that I didn't think it was a collapse where they dropped back in a 6-yard box and gave the ball away, and you could see they were clearly, frightened and panicked. So that was on that game. But I think overall, I think the players are so well drilled. They're told exactly what they can and can't do. And I'm pretty sure if somebody goes off script, it's brought up on the Monday morning and they're told not to do that, to trust the process, trust the team. If you do your job and you get stopped, somebody else has a bit of space, this type of thing. And it probably does eliminate the thought or the possibility of independent thinking or freedom of expression to a certain point. It's a legitimate claim.
JD, if you think back to the documentary, which I really enjoyed, and I know, look, there's an element of performance maybe and knowing the cameras are on, but I suppose they were, real team talks. What he kept stressing in the dressing room, what Pep kept stressing in the dressing room to the players, both around training sessions and around match day, was, I give you ideas. We work on how to bring the ball to the final third, guys. And then he kept saying, guys, once we're in the final third, it's all on you. You guys can do things with the ball I could only ever dream of. I give you a pattern to get to the final third, but now it's all on you. You come up, you do your thing. And that was, that seemed to be very much his rhetoric during that. Whether that's changed or whether that's the reality of the situation, whether he does give them complete freedom in the final third, I don't know. But that's what he was trying to push during the documentary anyway.
53106, I felt for Pep. He looked shocked. He didn't know what to do. I have to say, actually, I'll just finish the text. Madrid have been riding their luck in the Champions League. The referee was kind to them. As a Liverpool fan, I would have liked an all Premier League final. Diaz has been fantastic. I think Pep really conducted himself very well, actually. I know, look, this is first world problems here, but he must have been absolutely crushed after what happened there. But I even led the bulletin lads on, and I just kind of almost did this subconsciously, and I'm to listen to what you're saying. I'm thinking back, Pep has failed was my thing, and that maybe suggests to me that Pep is such the dominant figure there. Is there maybe a leadership deficit on the other side? When I think about Real Madrid, you've got an avuncular guy like Carlo Ancelotti. The players like him, they see him as a kind of father figure, mentor, and then they have the character. Maybe once again, if Grealish scores, you don't have this kind of debate. But you read the book, Shane, Keegan. You read the Ancelotti book. You can tell us all about him.
Look, John, it was genuinely, it's the best. I'm not just saying it in hindsight because of what happened the other night. It's the best sports management book that I've ever read, definitely. Now, look, I've had this conversation with you before that when you're looking at managers and trying to learn things from managers, I think you have to try and match yourself up against managers who you share personal characteristics with, never mind kind of managerial characteristics with. And I suppose his whole approach, as I've said, look, Alex Ferguson was an absolute genius. And don't get me wrong, I have read Alex Ferguson books and I have picked up bits and pieces, but his style of management would have been very different. I don't think I'd be capable of being the ruthless kind of all-conquering kind of leader that he was. I would be kind of more about working with the players and kind of, doing this as a team. Now, don't get me wrong, you still need leadership at the top of it, absolutely. But that's very much Ancelotti's way. And obviously, I'm sure you've seen the social media clips that have come out since where Tony Kroos has come out and said that Ancelotti actually called himself and Marcelo to get their opinions in the middle of extra time in relation to the next substitution he was going to make. That didn't surprise me in the slightest, having read the book, because he always talks about that you've got such a wealth of knowledge amongst your player base that he is all for kind of not sharing leadership again, but certainly taking their opinions on board. Even when he arrives at a club, John, he was going on about how when he arrives into a club, it's very much a case of, well, what would suit the players here? What style of play would suit the players here? What style of, what formation would suit the players here? And then he looks at all that, and then he alters his training methods and he alters his way of playing to suit what he thinks gets the most out of the players. I mean, a couple of examples he gave were that famous Christmas tree formation that he basically invented at AC Milan because he had 5 ridiculously talented centre midfielders. So he came up with a way of trying to squeeze all 5 into the starting team, and it worked really well for him. And the other example he gave was, look, the book is brilliant. He gives so many examples. That's what makes it great. He tells you, kind of gives you all the tricks of the trade right throughout his career. But he talks about Ronaldo and initially landing at Madrid, and Ronaldo was playing left, and Ronaldo comes and knocks on the door after a couple of games and walks in and basically says, boss, this is not working for me. This is not working for me. My days on the left are behind me. I think you need to change. You need to get me centre forward, or you need to change the formation, and I need to be closer to the goal. And Ancelotti says, so many managers would have got angry with him or told him to get out, I'm the boss, I'll do what I want kind of a thing. But again, with Ancelotti, it was a case of, well, he is my true world-class player. I find it hard to believe that I'm going to win a Champions League or a league title without him being at his best. Yeah, I'm going to give him what he wants here. And he literally changed the entire system to try and suit what he thought would get the most out of Ronaldo. And again, it paid dues because he went and won the Champions League. Now, it's not always going to pay dues, but yeah, it's a terrific book. The other thing, JD, was I went back to UCD a few years ago to do a master's in sports performance and coaching, and we were very, very lucky in that the guy who leads that course, the guys might be aware of him, a guy called Shay Kelly, who went over to, he's an Offaly man, who went over to England as a goalkeeper and came back and is now kind of head of sports studies at UCD, I think. He actually got Professor Chris Brady, who ghost wrote Carlo Ancelotti's book, and this was maybe a year after I had read it. He got him in as one of our guest lecturers. So again, he gave us tremendous insight into Ancelotti's way of working and how he communicates and how he thinks. And just for me as a manager, and given the management style I tried to apply, I found it very much aligned with Ancelotti, and I've had a huge liking for him everywhere he's gone. I've kind of kept my eye and shouted for his teams the whole way along. So part of me wanted City to win the other night because I'd have loved to see that final. But when I saw the reaction and when I saw Ancelotti at the final whistle and all that, I couldn't help but have a big broad smile too, you know.
Is he somebody, Damien, you'd like to play for, Ancelotti?
Yeah, I wouldn't have as great a knowledge there as what Shane has. I haven't read any of his books. I always wondered what type of manager he was because he's so quiet. You never hear or see anything of him. But I suppose the one thing I always look for with managers is after they leave a club, you never ever see anything bad ever said about him. Like, you never see any player come out and criticise him. I can't remember ever reading that. And that's very, very rare, because at some point at a football club, you'll have a group of players that you'll have upset, and usually there'll be an interview leak out or something where there's not damning criticism, but some form of criticism. And I can't ever say that I've ever heard anything about him. And I suppose that is as good an indictment as you're ever going to get, you know.
JD, the one other point I'd make from it, I'm sure it'd be interesting to. I'm sure Damien would probably, if you think of managers that you've had in the past, Damien, he makes a brilliant point, John, in that he says, look, we're all different people. We've all got different characteristics. We've got different ways of managing. Whatever is different about you compared to other managers, when you are successful, everybody will point to those as the reasons why you are successful. As soon as you are unsuccessful, everybody will point to those exact same characteristic traits as the reason why you are unsuccessful. So he said, for example, at Madrid, he followed in Mourinho. He said they purposely got me after Mourinho because Mourinho is all about, conflict and, ego and all that. And he said, I would be seen as the opposite. He said, I'm more about bringing everybody together and creating calm and peace and people wanting to get on. And he said, so I was the ideal manager for them in their eyes. And it worked. We won the Champions League in my first year. He said, I was the same manager in the second year, but once results started to go the other way, now it's a case of, he's too laid back and, he's not hard enough on the players. And he says, the exact same characteristics now get a very, very different spin, and now they're the reasons why I'm unsuccessful. He's bang on there,
Well, it's about opportunities. It's about people continuing to give you opportunities. Like, he had, 2 seasons at Paris Saint-Germain, 1 season at Bayern. He was at Everton last year. I call it the great escape from Everton with Carlo Ancelotti. So I think it's about people giving you opportunities. And like Florentino Perez is much maligned, and I would malign him, has given him an opportunity. And he's seen obviously something in him that would allow him to be possibly the first ever manager to win 4 Champions Leagues. Got to take a break. Damien Delaney, Shane Keegan and Dan McDonnell on Football Saturday. 53106 for your texts. We're back after this. Andrew, welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 8 this evening on this extended show. We're bringing you live commentary of Leinster's game away to Leicester in the Heineken Champions Cup quarter-finals. Munster are playing Toulouse at the moment. What is the latest? Alan Quinlan.
It's 14-7, John, to Toulouse. Their power is starting to tell. 2 or 3 scrums, they drove Munster off it. Munster, they got a penalty from one of those scrums, went to the corner. Munster repelled the Toulouse maul, got a brilliant turnover, held it up. And they had a 5-metre scrum themselves defending their own line, Munster, and they just got drove off it from the resulting turnover. Toulouse just put it through the hands, and Mathis Lebel scores in the corner from. It's looking ominous just with their power. certainly worrying. The crowd has gone a little bit quieter. There's certainly a bit of worry about that power and that scrum, and that's an area that's been the difference really in the last 10-12 minutes, John, is the scrum. They've just exerted incredible pressure and power there. Julian Marchand, he's the captain for today. French hooker, incredible power from them, and it's Munster are struggling. They're kind of hanging in there. They have a scrum now on the 10-yard line in the Toulouse half, but there's a big worry about this scrum now. Can Munster get it right, win the ball? They look quite good, Munster, when they have the ball, putting it through the hands, but Toulouse's power is telling at the moment.
OK, Quinny, thanks so much. 28 minutes on the watch at Lansdowne Road. Toulouse 14 points, Munster 7. Right now, though, football Saturday until 5. Don't miss Man City against Newcastle on Super Sunday Live, only on Sky Sports. Our coverage on Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent in the studio with me. Damien Delaney, the former Republic of Ireland international, and Shane Keegan, the UEFA Pro Licence coach, are on the line. Premier League latest scores. Burnley struggling 2-0 down to Aston Villa as Burnley tried to survive. Those goals from Danny Ings and Emi Buendia at Turf Moor. It is Brentford 2, Southampton 0. Chelsea 1, Wolves 0, subject to VAR. So we'll come back to you on that one. And Crystal Palace 1, Watford 0, Damien's old club. Crystal Palace 1-0 up. Wilf Zaha with a penalty at Selhurst Park. Brighton against Man United is a 5:30 start. Liverpool against Spurs at 7:45. Also let you know, in the Women's National League, Shelbourne 0, Peamount United 1 is the latest score from Talca Park. It is Sligo Rovers 1, Galway 2 at the Showgrounds. And in the Christie Ring Cup, a result: Kildare 5:25, Wicklow 3:10. Latest score: Mayo 2:22, Sligo 1:20. It's hard to believe that they could do the lot, Damien Delaney, but Liverpool, it's still on, this quadruple.
Yeah, just the Chelsea goal was ruled out there. If I was just watching.
There you go. Yeah,
it's the maddest VAR. It's a bit of pinball in the 6-yard box. They had to look at it from about 6 different angles, and there's so many feet in there. I'm not sure where they were drawing lines, but it's been given as offside. It's probably the correct decision, but I'm not really sure. Sorry, John. Liverpool, yeah, absolutely, they could. Absolutely, they could. They've got the strength and depth to do it. And obviously, the Premier League will probably be very, very difficult for them because they need Man City to drop points, but that would mean they'd also need to be flawless between now and the end of the season. But look, last year they struggled at centre back, and that cost them. They've addressed that and then some this season, and they're now able to rotate 5 or 6 players for the front 3 positions. Thiago seems to be getting better and better, and really has given that Liverpool midfield a different dimension of controlling the ball and controlling the tempo of games. Won his most amazing game the other night against Villarreal, but some of his games recently have been absolutely sublime. Fabinho is growing and morphing into, I think, the best number 6 in the world. A lot of things he does, filling passing lanes, incredible, slowing counter-attacks down, getting little touches on things. Very rarely seen him go to ground, sliding last-ditch tackles. Very rarely see him, giving away bad fouls, slight tugs of jersey possibly, but he's really growing too. So look, they're in a good spot. Life is good if you're a Liverpool fan right now, and they are motoring towards all 4, and I don't see any reason why they couldn't do it.
Would you play Konate in the Champions League final? Would you play Diaz, Damien?
I think Konate for me and Van Dijk, just visually the most formidable looking centre backs, both quick as anything. He really has settled. He had a couple of issues early on with the high line that they play. Perhaps wasn't used to the length they hold and the refusal to run in behind, but he seems to be getting a hang of it now. And then across the front, man, you'd really have to break down. Really have to break down that Real Madrid defence. Andy Carvajal playing right back. I think he's slowed down a little bit this year. Still gets it done just on pure heart. But I could imagine if he had somebody like Diaz playing against him. Having said that, Sadio Mane could do equally as much damage to him. But I think pace is what will really kill that Real Madrid back 4. Militao's a really, really good player, but he's loose, man. He does some really strange things. And I think speed is what will get them. So I would go for my quickest front 3, which for me would be Salah, Diaz, and probably... I picked the bones out of the third one, but I would go with Diaz and Salah, and then maybe, Mane, I suppose, would have to start too. So that would probably be my front 3.
I just wonder, maybe Damien or Shane on this, because, I'm trying to think, is there a comparison? I don't know, the year you got to the FA Cup final, Damien, maybe that... It's a strange one now because Liverpool are going to be immersed in this title race, and it can be very taxing and demanding. I think they're a better side than Real Madrid for me. But at the same time, Madrid have the title won.
Yeah.
They have the long build up to this final, and you can spin it whatever way you want. But I don't know, from experience, do you still think like the competitive edge of Liverpool has been involved in the title race? But the flip side of that is it can also be draining too if they fall short. Like, could this influence it in any way? You know, that Madrid
Maybe.
now can focus completely on this game with a slightly older squad, or, you know, in certain departments. You know, they're not going to be sort of doing that and silly in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, look, only once we see the game we can pick the bones out of that one, because, you know, you could say that they'll be rested for 2 or 3 weeks going into the final, or Liverpool will be battle hard and they'll be kind of moving. But the Champions League is the last one they'll play, right? The Premier League will be ironed out
a week before, yeah.
Week before, when the FA Cup final is
next week.
I don't even know when. Next week. So look, I suppose if they lose one, you know, I honestly don't know. It's difficult to answer that. It depends. I think that Liverpool's team, the biggest thing for Klopp, will keep them focused on whatever tournament they're playing in Premier League this weekend, and then obviously the FA Cup, and then, you know, the Premier League will kind of sort itself out. So, but the Champions League sells itself as if you're a player. So I think, you know, that's the last one. That's the huge one. That's one they really want, and they have the squad to rotate it. You know, that's the most important thing for them. You're not flogging the same group of players for the next. God, how many games they got left? 10 maybe, if they play all of them, 10 games maybe. So difficult one to answer that, Dan, to be honest.
Yeah, no, listen, it's one of you can probably flip it everywhere you want. I suppose that's where the rotation they have now is the thing that gives them the option, as opposed to being flogged. Because just as the intensity they play at, you always wonder, is there a danger of...
But we saw that against Villarreal in the first half. Now, it was 4 quarters. They lost 1 quarter. They won the other 3 quarters. But they were definitely a completely different team in the second half. And that's maybe because Villarreal flagged as well, you know.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, was it the Liverpool Spurs Champions League final? It was.
Don't mention that.
But that was very flat, though, wasn't it? It was.
That was terrible. It was one of the worst games of all time.
And it can happen. You know, it can happen. It's just the one thing when you have this date a long way in the diary. You know, for all.
Yeah, there was a huge gap between, for whatever reason. There was a big gap. I remember it was the 1st of June 2019. I'll never forget it, because I don't think I was sober by the time it actually kicked off, to be honest.
Certainly weren't at the end of it anyway. I still have to pull you up on your Man City winning the Champions League.
Well, it only took you 45 minutes.
It was like Isterbrack winning the champion hurdle in '98. I was thinking of you.
The first person to say it this week, actually, on News Talk. I was waiting for a bit.
I was thinking of you, because I was thinking, you know, Isterbrack cruised over the last. But there was no Madrid-sized hurdle.
More of an Annie Power situation.
Yeah, it was.
So, well, that's.
But knockout football, you just can't. You can't.
No, I need to go back to
banking it.
Golf tipping.
Yeah.
Can Spurs cause problems for Liverpool tonight, Damien? What about the fullbacks? Could they get behind the fullbacks the way Spurs play?
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking that question for a number of years, and it's getting more and more difficult. Obviously, everybody knows that weakness with Liverpool. Nobody ever seems to be able to get any joy out of it consistently. Teams are having moments against them. But I think that Liverpool juggernaut rolling into town is going to be too much for Spurs. The pace that Liverpool play at, the momentum that they're carrying at the moment, I don't think so, to be honest with you. But it wouldn't be unlike Antonio Conte just to throw a fly in the ointment, really. But it's going to be a cracking game either way. I do like Spurs under Conte. I think they're heading in the right direction. I hope he gets the backing that he needs and wants to rid the club of the players that he wants out, and to get in his types of players and really turn Spurs into a force that, you know, can be challenging for trophies and top 4 on a regular basis, and maybe even a good run to the Champions League last year. I think if Spurs, I think they missed the boat a little bit with Pochettino when they didn't back him after that Champions League final. I hope to God they don't miss the boat with this fella, because he is the type of manager, if he doesn't get what he wants, there's a fair chance he might not be there at the start of the season, because he's not going to stand on ceremony while Daniel Levy plays games and signs players that he doesn't want, or won't get rid of players that he doesn't want. I think he'll walk, and he won't be short of offers either. So I hope Spurs I hope Spurs don't, you know, throw this opportunity away, and they fully back this guy in the summer.
Well, spot on. Romero is, as a defender, he's got a bit of an edge about him. I've seen him a couple of times live. Have you been impressed by him?
Yeah, absolutely. Fabulous player. I love his front foot defending. That seems to be the way defending is going right now. That the high risk decision making just seems to be like, just make it and we'll pick up the pieces after it. And a lot of these players are so good, they're so fast. That they're getting away with it. You know, I see some of these centre backs make some decisions, and I just think to myself, going into areas you're thinking just bide your time, stay goal side. There's no rush, but they just seem to be so front foot that there's no no patience is probably a bit too harsh, but they're just, and he's right out of that school, to be honest with you.
What do you think is going to happen this evening, Shane? I think one thing that will benefit Liverpool, it's a night game. It's almost like a European night. Anfield will be rocking. They thrive on emotion and momentum, and that might be difficult for Spurs.
Yeah, look, I'm just thinking back to when we played them at White Hart Lane, JD, and that was an absolutely cracking game. And I mean, you said that at the start there, can they try and get in behind the full backs? And there's absolutely no doubt Spurs had huge success that night getting in behind the full backs. Absolutely huge success. They set up with the 5-3-2 or the 3-5-2, whichever you want to call it, which I think is definitely the system that has consistently given Liverpool the most problems, that you try and keep two reasonably high to run down the outsides of whichever two centre-halves Liverpool go with. And Spurs were devastating at that. And like, I've got the starting 11 in front of me. Would you believe our midfield three in that game, JD, was Harry Winks, Ndombele and Dele Alli. Obviously, we're probably looking at a very, very, very different. I would be surprised if any of those three feature in the starting lineup. No, they won't. You won't have any of those three in the lineup this evening. But I thought Spurs did very, very well in that game and did cause Liverpool big problems. Look, as you and I both know, the problem with Spurs is the complete and utter lack of consistency, whereas it's the exact opposite with Liverpool. You know what you're going to get with Liverpool. They're going to be absolutely bang on the money. And if Spurs are anyway not at their best whatsoever, there's only one result. But a Tottenham team at their best with Kane and Son set up there as the front two, as I say, to draw, will drop off. There's no doubt we'll drop off and let Liverpool have it and try and play on the counter. But I do think those two are probably as good as any two in the Premier League in terms of how the issues that they could cause Liverpool. So I don't think it would be the biggest shock in the world for Spurs to get something from the game tonight.
JD, Shane, do you think that Thiago gives Liverpool a different dimension in retaining the ball, and that, like before with Henderson, there was a lot of balls spun around the corner, forward passes early, and they turned the ball over quite a bit, and it gave a chance then to spin down the sides of what you're saying there with the two front players. But with Thiago, I think Liverpool are an awful lot more measured. They're dominating the ball an awful lot and starving teams of those opportunities, whereas before you might have had 10 opportunities to get on the side of them, now you're only having 2 or 3. And I suppose the probability of scoring from that is hard.
Definitely. And I think he's playing that well. He really is playing that well, Damien, that there's almost no point in trying to press him whatsoever, because he just, the way he goes about it with the eyes in the back of the head. You go and try and press him, and sure, it's pointless because you have to be there on his first touch. You can't let him have it. He almost never takes the first touch. He's just passing it with the first touch. I mean, I spoke about the Spurs midfield there to emphasise the gulf in quality in terms of the Liverpool side they'll be coming up against. Would you believe the Liverpool midfield three in that game, I'm looking at it here, was Morton, Milner and Keita.
The COVID issues at the time, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously that will be massively strengthened in comparison to that game. And look, that's it. You are just going to have to allow them to have the ball because they're keeping it so well. Again, I couldn't agree more with Damien in terms of Fabinho. I think he's been outstanding, and I think it gets overlooked just how good a player he is. He is absolutely fantastic. But look, if Spurs, as I say, if they're super patient and wait for those interceptions, you'd never know what they could do.
Okay, half-time in the Rugby, Munster against Toulouse. Alan Quinlan, how's it going?
It's 14-all. John Keith Earls just scored a great try before half-time. Pressure from Munster. Damien Delaney had a little mistake where he kicked the ball out in the full a few minutes ago, but some of his carrying is outstanding, his ball presentation, and he got Munster right in near that line, and they were able to put it through the hands. Little loop pass, great catch from Josh Wycherley close to the line. Looked like he was going to knock it on, and Toulouse just crammed in a little bit, and Joey Carberry gives the pass over the top, lands straight into the breadbasket for Keith Earls, and he's in the corner, and Carberry gets the kick from the touchline. He had missed a penalty a few minutes, straight in front, really out at the 10-yard line. He just hooked it. But Munster are the ones that are sprinting off the field at half-time. Toulouse walking off the field. The referee, Luke Pearce, has warned Toulouse a few times to hurry it up, get into the line-outs. They seem to try and slow it down as much as they can. But certainly then, when they strike, they look very, very dangerous. But Munster, I think, will be very, very happy scrum issues in the first half, no doubt. They've got to try and rectify that. They did a little bit later in the half, but certainly they'll probably be happy going in at half time. It's 14-all. It's a belter of a match.
Brilliant stuff, Quinny. As Soft Cells, Tainted Love blares out through the speakers at Lansdowne Road. 5:30 start for
John's ready to head out and just abandon the rest of the show till 8 o'clock. That's the end of you.
Leinster, 5:30. Got live commentary. We're on air till 8 o'clock. Shelbourne have beaten Peamount 1-0 in the Women's National League. It's Sligo 1, Galway 2 in injury time. And in the Premier League, half-time, great news for Leeds and Everton fans because Aston Villa are 2-0 up away to Burnley. It is Brentford 2, Southampton 0, Chelsea 0, Wolves 0 and Crystal Palace 1, Watford 0. All half-time scores. Brighton and Man United kick off at 5:30. Liverpool against Tottenham at 7:45. Football Saturday all the way between 4 and 5. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent, the former Republic of Ireland international, Damien Delaney and Shane Keegan, the UEFA Pro Licence coach. Get your texts in on 53106. We're on the air from 4 until 5 Football Saturday. Then we got the commentary of Leinster and Leicester. We're on the air until 8 this evening on Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. Don't go away. And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 8 this evening on this extended show. We're bringing you live commentary of Leinster against Leicester in the Champions Cup quarter-finals. At the moment, Munster 14, Toulouse 14 at Lansdowne Road. We've got Quinny down there with updates throughout the next hour. This is Football Saturday though for the moment. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball. We're streaming the conversation. Listen on News Talk. Watch us on the digital and social channels for Periscope on Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook and on the OTB Sports app. Damien Delaney, Dan McDonnell and Shane Keegan with us. Let's get some half times from the Premier League and a huge game at Turf Moor. Burnley against Aston Villa. Reporting Adam Jury.
Aston Villa hold a commanding 2-0 lead away at Burnley, which will frustrate the hosts because while Burnley have worked possession well, they've been punished for being wasteful in front of goal. The Villains took the lead 7 minutes in when Buendia fed Ings into the box. The former Claret striker slotted into the left corner. On 31, Buendia turned from goal creator to goal scorer as he found the back of the net with a deflected strike inside the box. As it stands, Villa are on course to record back-to-back wins. Half-time at Turf Moor. It's Burnley 0, Aston Villa 2.
Half-time at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea against Wolves. Andrew Cheel.
Chelsea 0, Wolves 0. Chelsea have had the ball in the net twice, both times disallowed. Alonso's corner, pinball at the far post, Loftus-Cheek stabbed home, but VAR took an age to rule it offside. Earlier, Werner had the ball in the net. He was judged to have shoved his defender. No need for VAR on that occasion. Werner and Lukaku have also forced decent saves from the Wolves keeper. Chelsea keeper Mendy had one save to make, parrying a firm shot by Neto. It's Chelsea 0, Wolves 0.
Half-time Crystal Palace against Watford from Selhurst Park. Reporting Ian Beach.
Crystal Palace 1, Watford 0. Wilfried Zaha's penalty, the only difference between the teams. The game's followed a predictable general pattern. Palace's creative players, Zaha, Eberechi Eze, Conor Gallagher and Michael Olise forcing Watford to hurry back and pack their penalty area. And in a roundabout way, that led to the penalty, given when Olise headed the ball against the arm of defender Hassan Kamar. VAR checked the decision and Zaha scored from the spot. Crystal Palace 1, Watford 0.
And half-time Brentford against Southampton. This one from London from George Alderman.
Half-time here and it's Brentford 2, Southampton 0. 2 goals in a minute from the home side, putting them in charge. The first, Pontus Jansson, the Brentford captain, scrambling home from a corner after good work by Ivan Toney. And then moments later, Johan Wissert with a really good effort from the edge of the area, curled into the bottom corner. Southampton did have the ball in the net just before half-time. A really good finish from Adam Armstrong after Christian Eriksen's pass was cut out. But he was offside. Brentford looking a threat from set pieces and on the break, and that's where their goals have come from. They lead Southampton 2-0.
Celtic have effectively wrapped up the Scottish Premiership title, 4-1 win over Hearts today. Hasn't changed after the final day of the Championship in terms of the playoff spots. Huddersfield, Nottingham Forest, Sheffield United and Luton Town in that order. Bournemouth and Fulham are already up. Derby, Peterborough and Barnsley relegated to League One. Just a shout out, I mentioned earlier before about memorabilia. So I'm giving another shout out to listeners about valuable football memorabilia. Maradona's Hand of God shirt went for over 7 million quid this week. Do you have anything valuable you think is priceless, you'd never flog, or maybe you suddenly thinking about selling? 53106 at a cost of 30 cents. Shane Keegan, you sent in a photograph. I know we've had this debate before, but we put it up on the screen for anybody watching on the digital or social channels. A framed Maradona shirt, which is a signed by Diego?
It is signed, John. Yeah. As you say, look, I think I might have given the bare bones to this story before, so apologies to anybody.
Are you thinking of selling it now, Shane?
Definitely not. No, definitely not. The backstory on it, John, as I say, it's a good one. The first jersey I ever had was Maradona's 1986 World Cup jersey. I would have been 4 at the time. And a good few years back, many years my married. It was short coming up towards my wedding 8-9 years ago now at this stage. And my mum, as part of a work function, went to a charity event. And part of the charity event was that they had a silent auction for various different memorabilia. And by her own admittance, Mum had maybe a couple of glasses of wine, and up came the Maradona jersey, and she decided nothing but her little boy had to have this jersey, given that it was the first jersey he ever owned. And she still won't tell me what she paid for it. Thankfully, all I was told was to make sure I put it on my house insurance. I dread to think what bid she put down in the silent auction. But I'm now the proud owner of it, John.
Cherished.
Great story. I would have expected more clarity from Shane about when his wedding was, though, to be fair. That was a slight error. I would have thought that was a slight aberration. It's not the type of thing you're going to go, I must have been around 8 or 9 years ago, Shane. I mean, really, just to be clear, you're on radio. You've said that out loud.
You're on national radio.
Any need to highlight that?
I was just thinking that was a bit of a flippant sort of response, whatever that was, you know. But he remembers specifically every detail about the Maradona jersey, which is an insight into the character. Like, you know what I was just thinking? I mean, Steve Hodge it was who sold that. Like, you know, is it possible that he made more from that sale than he did
in his career?
You
have to think so.
You know, when you think, you know, when the time that he played, you know, like he would have sort of bled into early Premier League era. So maybe he might have made okay money then. He was England international, but it is sort of a crazy story, isn't it? You know, I mean, I'd imagine some of his like, you know, I'm not being sort of even being, you know, sort of not mean to be flippant about it, but you wouldn't know. Like, I think there was some members of that squad like would have subsequently fell on hard times in various ways, you know, and it's like, wow, like, you know, what brought him to that place? You know, did he always think one day this would be? I don't know what the reason are. Maybe he's spoken about it, and maybe I don't mean to be disrespectful if that's the case, but like that's sort of an extraordinary tale, really, isn't it? I mean, I suppose it's sort of unique. It's not as if, I don't know, are there all these players out there now who are suddenly thinking, oh, I swapped shirts with such and such in such a time. Like, I just wonder, is just there's something especially iconic around that that's
probably
sort of this perfect moment for it.
Maybe
when I was up in Dublin during the week, and I was talking to Jerry Armstrong, and he was telling me one of his stories that after one of his games he ended up getting Platini shirt.
Oh.
he said that's probably decreased in value.
Yeah, that's a problem. It's like playing stocks and shares, really, isn't it? That one, it's like check the news from the latest news from UEFA. It's like, oh no, you know, try and flog it to someone and, you know, just turn off their Wi-Fi, you know, and see what you can do.
I was on Twitter, my own Twitter at John Duggan Sport. I got some of the following replies. Ricky Garrity is the signed Man United ball from the 1999 treble winning team. He paid €900 for it at a charity auction. I wonder what it's worth now, or what will be worth. Alan's got an Ireland jersey from 1934, and Ger Sheehan's got the last ever Ireland shirt worn by Packy Bonner, signed. Ritz also emailed in photos of 2 walkout jackets from Tottenham's League Cup finals of 1971 and 1973. Got some text in here on 53106. I've got a few France 98 mouse mats still in the packs I got as a promo when working in sales. Wouldn't part them for love nor money. €10 each, says Mark and Tala. And I've got a Damien Delaney shirt worn from the Ireland-Poland friendly, worth a fortune, says Kieran and Carrigaline in Cork. I don't know if you know Kieran, Damien.
Absolutely not. I'll buy it off you, Kieran.
£7, 70. I don't know, on the scale of the Maradona, like, you know, I thought, no, I'd take that. Did you, I don't know, did you keep your cup final jersey or anything like that, Damien, or did you swap that?
No, I still have that, yeah. They're all in storage, though. Everything that I had is in storage. I haven't taken it out yet.
Yeah, some people are very particular, aren't they? About
some
this?
people are not.
You see, Myler might be on, and he's framed jerseys and stuff. I don't know. Are you that way inclined, Damien?
Definitely not. Absolutely not. No, I don't. They're all in cardboard boxes in a storage unit. Like, you know, obviously boots from games that you would have played in and stuff like that. So. I'll get them at some point, but no, definitely not. It's not something that I would like to wake up every morning and look at, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I've boxes full of like lanyards and match tickets and programs. And generally, like, people go to these program fairs. They actually are a big thing. I think it's my excuse for like cluttering up, you know, sections.
Is there anything you value or like a really?
I don't know. I've just put it all there, and then in years to come, I mean, I'm not, you know, it's not like, you know, I've been to 3 World Cups and you know, finals and stuff like that, and I generally keep a lot of stuff and put it away, and you sort of think maybe it's one of those things that in 10, 15, 20 years time you might open it up and go, oh wow, there's the team sheet from France Ireland and the Henry handball or something.
Yeah.
And like maybe in some, but to me it's more about keeping it for the keepsake rather than it. But there is like a sort of a club of people who like buy programs.
The amount of responses on Twitter,
but look, there's program fairs where people. I mean, there's people who actually, they'd come up to people. They'd come up to you after a game, say in the press box, and go, "Have you got a team sheet in your program?" And you might think, "Oh, it's an act of kindness." You give it. No, so people like they methodically collect this stuff and then swap it. There's a whole little cottage industry there, I think, going on with it, You know
what I still have, Dan, is, do you remember 94 World Cup and 96 Euros, I think? Remember you had to, like Mars and Snickers and all of those bars, you had to hold on to the wrappers and send them in for the little pin collections.
Right,
you get the little pin of each of the different countries. I remember holding on to we used to go into... You'd go into a GA grounds after a match and should be wrappers left in the stands all over the place. We'd be scurrying around picking up all the wrappers to send in to get the pins. But the pin collections do look really, really well. They are, like you say, they are a good kind of keepsake.
I think, wasn't there something, I wonder were we doing this when we were doing the World Cup rewinds and stuff. I think people might text in. I'm trying to think, is it my father-in-law or someone? Do you remember there was people remember this, there was like Italian 90 milk bottles and stuff like that.
There was milk bottles, yeah.
There was special milk bottles, and I think that Dave was mentioned before. Maybe people text in and remember them, that they kept a lot of them.
I have one at home, but
there was specific Italian 90 ones, wasn't there?
I have one at home, but I never kind of thought it was a big deal. There was a Texaco did something around the World Cup. I had a Texaco 1986 World Cup ball. I remember it was quite a big deal at the time. Yeah. But milk bottles. I've got Pele here. Pele, anybody who's watching on the digital and social channels. So I'm going to raise your Maradona with Pele there, Shane Keegan. So.
It's a signed photograph, is it?
It is a signed photograph, yeah.
Was it signed by him?
Yeah.
I was?
Yeah, I met him in...
No. I'm not being...
You think JD signed it himself?
Listen, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on JD's memorabilia, but I think at times you do see people with signed stuff, and
there's actually photographic evidence.
They would have
me and Pele.
No, I know you met him. I know he was at the time, but at times there might be certain minions assigned to. I don't know. Did you ever do that demo? Did you ever get someone to do some do some correspondence on your behalf or something?
No, absolutely not.
You never did. No.
Dan, I was at a club auction. I won't say the club, so we won't get them in trouble, but I remember being at a club auction a good 10-15 years ago where a Liverpool fan played about €400 for a Liverpool jersey that was signed by Robbie Fowler. It wasn't, it's ours. It was signed by the club chairman about 10 minutes beforehand.
You see, there you go. There's the evidence, If anyone else wants to, report any other sort of signature fraud, they can text in their tales as well.
Yeah, and we'll report you to the local constabulary. 53106, last my birthday, I wanted to bring my dad to his first Ireland game versus Gibraltar a few years ago, the Viva. He still has the match programme on his bedside locker. Brutal game, but it's a keepsake of his first game. That's a nice story.
Yeah, that's it. You never know what certain games will mean to people.
Damien, did you ever want to swap jerseys with anybody, or is that something you've never interested you or anything?
Not really, no, to be honest with you. Like, maybe if you met someone after the game and stuff, we the thing when we first went to the Premier League with Palace, that like a lot of fellas were swapping jerseys, and you get wind that fellas were like organising it before the game, to get jerseys afterwards and stuff. Like, so I remember we had a team meeting once about that, saying like we can't have that carry on, that we weren't kind of like being tourists or anything like that. So we were kind of saying, look, after the game, if you want to go and see the opposition kit man or whatever, and try and get a shirt or something, but I don't see anything wrong with it. But I do see if people are already organising before the game to get shirts afterwards, then I think that was great for our kind of morale, really, if fellas' heads are worried about that type of stuff. But afterwards, a lot of people do it. As I said there, Myler has a wall full of shirts and stuff, and some people treasure that, it's memories and things. But I don't have anything like that, no.
With your kit, do you get a new one each week, or is it just recycled?
Yeah, absolutely. But believe it or not, players get charged for swapping kits, and I think they do that even right all the way to the top Premier League clubs. It comes out your wages. So if the club need to reprint a shirt, I think it works out. I think it was something like 40 quid or something. So that's why I never used to swap shirts or give any away. No, but I know that even top Premier League clubs do take out players' wages. Most players, I always had multiple, 2 or 3 kits there just in case, because I like to change shirts at half time and stuff like that. So, that's
mad about would that just being like a pay slip or something that you'd have a little sort of little deduction?
Yeah,
right.
Deductions. Yeah, like so if you order, obviously you get a certain amount of complimentary tickets. But if you're need way more, and you need to organise them separately, like when you get your pay slip, it'll be like deductions.
Right. Okay.
Like, you know what I mean, of extra tickets that you bought, or shirts and stuff. Yeah.
Mm.
We got Premier League scores to give you latest scores. Now Aston Villa 3, Burnley 0. So Burnley, that's a big blow for them in their race to survive. And it's the third goal from Villa scored by Ollie Watkins. So Buendia and Ings and Watkins have all scored. Chelsea have scored a second goal. They scored one just a few moments ago. So the first one came through Lukaku from the penalty spot. And they've just got another. We'll give you the score as soon as we have it.
It's Lukaku again, John.
Yeah, Crystal Palace 1, Watford 0 as well, and Brentford 2, Southampton 0. So Everton and Leeds, maybe a bit of a glimmer of hope, Damien, for them ahead of their games tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an incredible finish as well to the season, to watch that battle unfold. Leeds thought they were safe at one point until Everton went and beat Chelsea. Maybe not safe, but they had a bit of a gap, and then Everton went and won that game and just dragged them all right back into it. Burnley losing today as well. I think they played 35 now, and the others on 33. Leeds on 34 maybe. So it's going to be fascinating. There's 2 huge football clubs there in Everton and Leeds that could be seriously detrimental to both clubs if they went down. Burnley, I'm not saying it wouldn't be detrimental, obviously, but they wouldn't have the wage bill the size of those other clubs have, and Burnley have always kind of kept within a certain remit financially. So they'd have a lot of players that would go back into the Championship and could happily come back out again. But whereas you'd imagine clubs like Everton and Leeds, would lose an awful lot of players. It'd be very, very hard to motivate all those guys to go back into the Championship. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out.
The one thing I would say about Burnley is with their ownership situation, and there's a real sort of leveraged buyout type thing going on. The fear actually is if they do go down, they could sink completely. So that's the slight caveat there. But I think we might discuss the relegation thing. The fact that now Brentford are now effectively safe, it looks like, with today. This is how the whole fixture list can take on a different complexion. Like both Everton and Leeds have to play Brentford now. And you saw the Championship earlier on. You have some teams that are sort of on the beach or whatever, and at the end of the season, you're trying to assess the schedule and figure out what's better for you. I have a feeling the key game in the season might turn out to be Everton beating Chelsea last week. Because Everton, I think, were in that psychological place of nearly being sort of 5 points behind, and then it starts to run away from you. I think them winning that, and it may well be that Burnley all of a sudden, they're the ones who run out of steam.
I know they play Spurs.
They have to play Villa again. After
and Tottenham,
and then I think they play Newcastle the last day of the season. So Eddie Howe has a bit of history at Burnley and stuff too. So it may well be, although Everton still just have to get the points on the board, but playing Brentford in 1 or 2 of the games they have left may not be as intimidating as they were.
We have text in here on 53106. Lads, my memory serves me, most of the England team against Argentina in the 1986 World Cup didn't want Maradona's shirt as they were disgusted with the hand of God goal.
Oh, you could be right actually with that. Yeah, that actually, there is opportunism at its best, to be fair, from Hodge. He deserves that.
Also wonder what Steve Hodge's shirt would raise for the Maradona family, says Eamon in 2 Mile House, enjoying the show as always. I don't think Peter Shilton would have wanted it, and probably still doesn't want it. Lads, I've got the Athlone AC Milan booklet in my man cave, signed by all the Milan team, including Trapp himself. Grandad gave it to me, says Sean Berry in Athlone. I think it was 1975, that game. And my uncle lived in Shrewsbury. He gave me a lot of old programmes from 1970 games of Shrewsbury versus Crewe, Wolverhampton, Coventry and Lowestoft, Maddis collection, and in 1972 the Stoke-Chelsea League Cup final, the only gem.
I remember Trapp telling us that Trapp was a great storyteller, but he wasn't always bang on with the facts. He told us at one stage that he arrived to that Athlone game via boat. Which I was thinking which would have been interesting in the Midlands, to be honest.
Maybe it was a Shannon
Cruise. Maybe it was a Shannon Cruise of some description, but I was like, I'm not entirely sure about that. But, it's a good story, though.
Yeah, texts and tweets. Liverpool lose 3 finals and Chelsea win the FA Cup. Who's had the better season? Liverpool with just a League Cup, or Chelsea with a Super Cup or Club World Cup, third in the league and the FA Cup, says Andy. Surely Liverpool, even if they fail, Damien, they've had a better run.
Oh, yeah, I mean, to be competing on all 4 fronts in early May is incredible. The fans getting treated some super days out. Champions League final, FA Cup final, League Cup final, and then of course hanging every week in the Premier League on results and moments. I mean, the emotional turmoil Liverpool fans must be going through right now, even though times are good, is brilliant, and that's what football is all about. So I would safely say that Liverpool would feel they had the best season as well. Chelsea had a lot of off-field issues as well. So, you couldn't compare the two teams, no.
They're going to be sold to Todd Bailey's group. That's gone through, by the way. So, yeah.
JD, the cameras at the Chelsea game keep flashing to him. He's right at the game. That incident there that Damien was telling you about earlier was quite comical, because they showed him standing up and celebrating and cheering, and then he did that stupid American thing where they put their fingers in their mouth to wolf whistle, and all this is going on.
He's on message. Obviously knows the cameras are on him then.
Yeah, I'd say so, but you'd want to see his face when it was disallowed. Like, he really looked like he didn't understand what the hell VAR was. Like, what is this? What's going on? He couldn't wrap his head around it.
Yeah, so that's what's going on there. Let you know, it's Munster 21, Toulouse 14 now. So Munster ahead. We're going to go to Alan Quinlan after the break. So Munster, 51 minutes on the watch, and they have the ball, and Carbery's kicked it towards the 22. So Munster in the ascendancy against Toulouse, and Toulouse have a yellow card. So Toulouse have got a player in the bin, and he's just gone into the bin. So fascinating stuff. Are we going to have an All-Ireland semi-final between Munster and Leinster if Leinster can beat Leicester? That's our live commentary game here on Off the Ball, 5:30 kick-off with James Downey alongside Conor Morris for that. So we're on air until 8 this evening, and Football Saturday continues after the break with Dan McDonnell, Damien Delaney and Shane Keegan. And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 8 o'clock on this extended show this evening. We're bringing you live commentary of Leinster against Leicester in the Heineken Champions Cup quarterfinals. Munster lead Toulouse 21-14, 55 minutes on the watch at Lansdowne Road, and Toulouse have a man in the bin, 5 minutes still left on that yellow card. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball. We're streaming the conversation. Listen on News Talk, watch us on the digital and social channels for Periscope on Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook and on the OTB Sports app. Joined by the former Republic of Ireland international defender Damien Delaney, UEFA Pro Licence coach Shane Keegan, and the football correspondent of the Irish Independent Dan McDonnell. Between now and 5, remember, Football and Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Watch Liverpool versus Spurs tonight, live only on BT Sport. So, Dan, you were at Shamrock Rovers last night, and the breaking news yesterday, Stephen Bradley, the head coach, is staying. And after the 3-1 win over Finn Harps in the League of Ireland Premier Division, he spoke to our reporter, Oisín Langan.
Yeah, look, it's obviously been a busy week. Speaking to both clubs, weighing everything up, speaking to the players, speaking to the board of both clubs, and I just felt that it was I was right to stay here, and I have unfinished business here, and when we sat down and had a chat, that's what I felt.
What is that unfinished business?
I just feel we can be better in every department as a team and as a club. I think we need to keep striving to be better than what we were last year, the year before, and I feel that we can do that. I feel we have a really strong group. Time will tell whether we can do that or not, but that's the aim. Can we go and be better than what we were last year?
Is Europe a big part of that?
Yeah, it's a big part, but it's not the only part. I think a lot of people make a lot of Europe, and it is important in every aspect, but it's not the only thing. Defending our title is number one, and obviously Europe plays into that as well.
I've been having this discussion with people lately that players and managers no longer just have to jump at the first English offer that comes along, which kind of used to be the case. Isn't that a great sign of the league, although there's still an awful lot of work to do overall, but also specifically of Shamrock Rovers that you stayed, because there was a time where most managers would be out the gap at any such offer?
Yeah, look, I can only speak for myself. You're obviously right in what you're saying, that seemed to be in the past that every manager or player that got the first opportunity was gone. But I can only speak for myself that, like I said, I'm very, very happy with my decision, very, very comfortable with it. And when I spoke to the board here, and my mind was put at ease with what we want to do, we can achieve it here. And like I said, we have unfinished business, so yeah, it's time to focus and let's go and do it.
Why did you almost go, if that makes sense? What tempted you about Lincoln?
Because Lincoln are a brilliant club. I think a lot of people in Ireland wouldn't have known a lot about them, but when you actually meet them and meet the people that run the club and the plans they have for the club, they're a really, really forward-thinking club, really good plans for the club. They're realistic in what they are and what they want to do, and they have a really realistic time frame and how they want to do it. So it's a really, really appealing club, and I've no doubt they will be successful. So you'd be silly not to really consider it, because, like I said, everything about them was class. They were really good people, and really respectful, and really good football people.
I'm sure at some point in the future you want to manage at a higher level, be that England, Scotland, or maybe even here. Maybe you can get Shamrock Rovers to that higher level if you get into the Champions League group stages. That is the higher level. I don't think that's unattainable. It might take a few years, but I don't think it's unattainable. Are you worried that by saying no to this opportunity you might not get it again, or can you allow yourself to think like that?
No, I think you got to understand that you make decisions in every walk of life, and I'm always one that is very strong. When I make a decision, I'm comfortable with it. You can't ever live with regrets. You make a decision and you stand by it, and I've made my decision. The future will be what it is. I don't panic myself or worry myself about that. I want to challenge myself at different levels in different countries, but I know when I want to do that and how I'm going to do that. So I'm not under any sort of pressure. I don't feel maybe you never get it again. That doesn't come into me thinking. You make a decision on what's in front of you, and what will be will be.
Stephen Bradley there. Munster further ahead, 24-14, looking good now in the Champions Cup, 20 minutes to go. So Stephen Bradley staying, Dan McDonnell.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been covering this story across the week, and overall, I have to be honest, I'm still a little bit surprised he didn't go, I have to say. But, across the week, you'd sort of be chatting to various people, and there was, I think, everyone outside Rovers but around the game seemed convinced he was going to go. Rovers people I don't think ever really truly gave up, but I'd imagine it was fairly sort of finely poised in terms of where he went, and I think that interview covers the tone of the interview I would have been sat in last night too. There was a couple of different ones that he I think there's no doubt he plans to go eventually. I think he has a sort of a timeline in his head about when that may be. Why I was surprised he didn't go was because I think going to the UK from here is a difficult thing to do. At the moment, there's no manager born in the 26 counties employed in the 4 leagues in the UK as a manager. It's hard, and Lincoln do, again, speaking to people maybe that work in the English scene, Lincoln do appear to be a well-regarded club. And you're getting a full pre-season. They understand Bradley, what he wants to do, what he wanted to do, what type of style he plays. And you feel like he'd get more of a chance there than maybe you might get a job with a bigger club, but it could be a more trigger-happy club in what is a pretty brutal environment over there in terms of job survival. But the flip side and the reasons for staying is that he does have a good job here, and I suppose when you go, there's always a risk contained within it, and maybe the most exciting year at Shamrock Rovers is ahead of them. They're going to be seeded in the European draw this summer on account of just a couple of results that have gone their way. I think the Liverpool result actually affected that, with Villarreal being out of it, and maybe he just didn't have that feeling in his gut that the time is right. But I'd be interested to hear the lads' opinions. I think maybe some people would think, oh, you just have to go to England when the chance comes. You just have to take it. And maybe there's an element that by saying no, you're making yourself a little bit more hard to get by not jumping for that. But it did appear to be a decent job, But I think, to be fair, in a way, there was a good buzz around Tala last night. There's a big couple of months ahead of them. It could be an exciting year for them, and maybe this gives everyone a confidence boost in that regard. But I don't know. I'd be interested to hear other opinions. I've spoken a lot about this week.
Shane, what's your opinion?
The first thing I'd say on it, JD, is I think Stephen Bradley came across incredibly impressively in that interview. I think he's handled the questions very well, and he's been very open and honest there, because you can hear in the way that he talks about Lincoln that he was seriously considering it. And I suppose that's what surprised me about it was I don't think you have to jump at the first opportunity to go to England. I absolutely don't, and that's not what I'm saying. It's just, I think you've got to look at, have I got a real chance of being successful at this club? Am I going to be given the back end, the time? Is it the kind of project that appeals? And if the answer to all of those questions isn't yes, well then don't take the job, back away from it. The amazing thing here is, I think the answer to all those questions for Stephen Bradley was yes. I think he weighed it all up, and you can hear it in his tone of voice, the respect he has for the club. I think he looked at it and he went, yeah, this is a good club going in the right place. It seems to have the right people involved. And there was almost no danger signs or reasons to say no to it, and yet he's taken all that on board, and he has still decided to say no, and that can only be because he's so convinced by the project that he has at Shamrock Rovers. Dan and others have publicised that Dermot Desmond certainly had a word in relation to the whole situation. You would imagine, and I'm purely speculating, that Stephen maybe and his staff have better terms maybe in their contract, or maybe certainly get better terms whenever that's renewed, and so they should, 100% so they should. But I think this would have been much bigger than money, and I think Stephen just genuinely believes that he can achieve the aims that he wants to achieve over the next 18 months at the club that he's at. It is a risk because football management is arguably the most precarious occupation you can possibly have. Everything is wonderful and sunny in the world of Stephen Bradley and Shamrock Rovers at the moment, and I would be inclined to think it will stay that way for the next year to 2 years and possibly beyond, but you don't know. You never know. And Derry are coming strong. If Stephen didn't win the title this year and then went to another year and didn't win it again next year, all of a sudden your stock drops dramatically, and that's where the risk is. But I have to say, listen to that interview, it's hard to do anything but admire the stance that he's taken.
We got text in here on 53106. It's actually connected to Rovers on Memorabilia. I'm a senior Rovers reporter from Milltown. I have a treasured photo of Paddy Coates' team who defeated Cork Athletic in the early 50s team. What a team, says Dolores. And it's a huge week for Shamrock Rovers, with Sligo Rovers and Derry City coming to Tala over the next week. We've got 2 pairs of tickets to give away for Monday's game against Sligo. To enter, just text Rovers followed by your name to 53106. Tickets to Monday's game and Friday's match with Derry are on sale at shamrockrovers.ie. Got a breakaway. Aviva Stadium. Munster are ahead of Toulouse in the Champions Cup quarter-final. Alan Quinlan.
Yeah, John, it's incredible. The intensity there is just phenomenal. There's a big bit of pressure from Toulouse. Munster leading 24-14. Rory Arnold had a tackle there about 10 minutes ago. He's back on the field. In my opinion, should have been a red card on Simon Zeboy, lifting him above the horizontal. Zeboy stayed down injured. Mike Haley got a great try there from a Chris Farrell break. It's incredible. Peter O'Mahony coming up, he's off now. Big turnover for him. Toulouse are in the Munster 22. They have a line out, but Munster's defence and work of the breakdown has been exceptional. But Toulouse have unleashed the bench. All their power is on now, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Munster have got to weather this storm here. They've come up with some big defensive plays, but it's all pressure now. Toulouse, Munster lead 24-14, 64 minutes gone.
Thanks, Quinny. We got commentary of Leinster and Leicester at 5:30 from Welford Road on air until 8 o'clock this evening. Speaking of Stephen Bradley there, Damien Delaney, it's hard to leave your own country. I know you left when you were a young lad, and I think you went to Leicester first, was it, Damien?
Yeah. Listen, I follow that story quite closely. In my own personal opinion, I think Stephen's made the correct decision. Jumping at the first chance or the second chance, I think, doesn't matter. It's jumping at the best chance. And I think a club like Lincoln, he said a lot of nice things about them there. I mean, it's in League One. Its budget would be considerably smaller. It's finished 17th this year. You're taking over a job and obviously you want to be successful. I don't think that Lincoln would have the capacity to make it into the championship or get up near the top of that table, which means Stephen's working in a job where you're just trying to maintain and stay in the league. And I don't think that's a good fit for him. He's got the best job in the country in terms of how well run Shamrock Rovers are. They've got the academy set up there. He's looks to have complete control of that football club and what he wants to do. And I think there's better opportunities up the road for Stephen. I think, if he does go, and he will be looking to go, because every manager or every person is always looking to better themselves. And if you've won the League of Ireland and you feel you've done everything you can do in this country, then you need to move abroad to keep bettering yourself. So he will go eventually, but I don't think Lincoln was the correct opportunity. I mean, you say what you want. They're not a massive football club. I think they're probably punching above their weight, being in League One. I know you could argue that Luton are doing well in the Championship, but maybe they have a better budget. But I think Stephen would find it very, very difficult there. I think with the set of European fixtures coming up now, I would say Stephen, my own personal opinion is he's probably looked at it and said, there's far better opportunities up the road for me. If he has a good run in Europe this year, he's backed himself that he will be able to put a run together, win the League of Ireland again, and potentially have a good run in Europe, maybe qualify for the group stages of a European competition. and all of a sudden his stock is way higher. So I think it's the correct decision. I wouldn't have been jumping at Lincoln at all. I think that's a very iffy job for me. I've lived in that part of the world. It's out on its own there on the East Coast. No disrespect to Lincoln. If there's any Lincoln fans listening, I've played at Lincoln, so I know what type of football club it is. It's a lovely town. It'd be a lovely area to live, but Stephen's obviously seriously career motivated, and I think he's right to stick at it, get a good run in Europe, and there'll be much better offers up the road for him.
Yeah, like he is. I suppose he is only 37, John. Like that is the thing. He's been he's been in management a long time, but it's not like, I don't know. It's
like that,
the only one, you know.
What would like success be for Stephen if he went and signed for Lincoln? I mean, realistically, it would be keeping him in League One.
Well,
that means every year you're absolutely kicking and screaming, trying to better your squad just to keep your head above water. That's not an environment that Stephen wants to be in, especially with the type of football that he plays and the way he goes about the game. Because if you go on a bad run, all of a sudden you get relegated, and then he's just, sure, another League of Ireland manager, you know. It ends up coming back to Ireland, you know.
Yeah.
I think if
converted try for Toulouse. Munster 24, Toulouse 21.
Yeah, I take the point. I suppose the one thing I would say is, right, that Lincoln had gone for... They were looking for Bradley because there's a particular type of appointment. I think what you see in England now, and even in League One, you see certain managers who go to a team, and I think you're right. Okay, they were in the playoffs last year, but in reality, you know, there's Derby are coming down. You know, some of the teams in that division, Portsmouth weren't in the playoffs. Whoever doesn't go up out of Sunderland, Sheffield Wednesday, whatever, like there's massive teams in that division.
Bolton, Wigan,
but what I would say is, like, you see the likes of, say, Russell Martin went from MK Dons to Swansea. The manager at MK Dons now has a very good reputation. Even Brian Barry Murphy got relegated, but he got to Man City because of how his Rochdale team played, you know. So if Bradley went in there and he, again, is similar to Rovers, he put a team together that had a bit of an identity and a style of play. It feels like there's a sort of a trend towards that type of manager over there, if you know what I mean. So in reality, Lincoln would have been maybe a stepping stone potentially over there. But I totally see where you're coming from too, in how it could go south very quickly. And because he doesn't have, say, a CV over there, you can be one and done if your first one doesn't go especially well. But I could see I could see the argument for going, though, as well, just the type of manager that's doing well there at the moment. I can see he was previously sort of mentioned with MK Dons, who again had a particular type, and eventually hired a guy from Belgium who's been doing very well. He's a Scottish guy who's been coaching in Belgium. So they're going less for names now and maybe young coaches in the UK, and maybe that's the bracket he's considered in, if you know what I'm saying. But there's definitely layers to it.
His job that he picks needs to be the right platform, and a club like MK Dons that are reasonably well set up, you know. I mean, it's in a new stadium and they've got a certain type of player there and a budget there, but he would have spoken to Lincoln, looked at their budget and just went, Jesus, this lot are at the peak of their powers and they're just keeping their head above water. And that's not an environment for him to be like operating in with the brand of football that he plays, because that is an absolute monster of a league, by the way. When you look at the size of the clubs that are down there, that is hell for leather. 46 games a season and you got to be bang at it, and the pressure you're under. So for what it's worth, I saw it and I went, geez, if he takes that, I think he'd be mad. And that's just from the outside looking in.
It's interesting, yeah. It's interesting. Not too many have said that, I have to say. So like that's
I think he'd be mad to go there.
Yeah.
Okay, Chelsea 2, Wolves 1 in the Premier League. Lukaku scored twice today. Crystal Palace 1, Watford 0. Burnley 0, Aston Villa 3. So Leeds and Everton really buoyed by that news today. And Brentford 3, Southampton 0. We saw in the Championship earlier on that nothing really changed in terms of the playoff spots. It'll be Nottingham Forest, Huddersfield Town, Sheffield United and Luton contesting the playoffs. Celtic have pretty much wrapped up the Scottish Premiership title today with a 4-1 victory over Hearts earlier on. So Rangers in the Europa League final, but Celtic are going to win the Scottish League, and Ange Postecoglou has done very well. So you can be proud of your Celtic to 2 today, Shane Keegan.
And it's been a very, very good season for them, in fairness. Absolutely, really good season. The only problem now is obviously they'll be hoping that the blue side doesn't win a European competition. That would sour the season for them.
You're a student of managers, Shane. Like Postecoglou's come in and he's done a great job.
He's done a brilliant job. He really, really has. And I mean, that was a difficult enough position that he arrived into the club in. You know, some Celtic managers come in a position of strength and it's pretty easy sailing for them. But it was far, far from that. And again, I suppose we were talking earlier on about Ancelotti and how players seem to, when he leaves, Damien was saying when he leaves, nobody ever says anything bad about him. Now I know he's still there, he hasn't left Celtic, but the players absolutely rave about him. They really, really do. They absolutely rave about him. And it was a fantastic appointment. I would have known little to nothing about him. As I've said before, I would be a big Eddie Howe fan, and he was, I suppose, kind of the big name, been linked with it at the time, and I would have loved to have seen him get that. I was speaking to somebody there the other day who had been out in Australia and therefore was a fan of his because he'd seen how well he'd been doing out there, but it was still a bit of a left field appointment, but a really, really good one that's definitely worked out.
Arsenal, it seems to have turned a corner, Damien Delaney. Would you think they're the favourites for the top four now? Arteta signed in a new deal yesterday. They beat Chelsea, they beat Man U, they won at West Ham.
Oh, man. I think how many times have we said that Arsenal turned the corner in the last summer until they're actually turned it and they're way up the road and they're in the Champions League next year? Then I might believe that there'll be some significant change at Arsenal. Look, he's definitely had an effect there, Arteta. He's definitely there's definitely been a culture shift at Arsenal, and I really think he has at the beginnings of implementing something reasonably good there. I just wonder, do they have the bottle, I suppose, or the stamina to get it over the line? They're going to come under an increasing amount of pressure. Conte and his attitude, he will just be kicking and screaming to get his team into it. Obviously, Manchester United are, I believe, too far adrift now. Between the pair of them, there's a North London derby coming up. Arsenal, it all looks still a little bit brittle for me. I'm not sold on it. They're decent, they're good. I like watching them, but I feel like the train could come off the tracks any minute, and they're capable of beating Tottenham and then losing to a relegation threatened team the following week. So that would be my take on that.
And Damien, just a quick take. We can't leave a show without you talking about Man United. It's just kind of fizzled out, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some serious work needs to go into that football club over the summer. The beginnings of it seem to be happening. I believe Ten Hag is going to have a huge say on the structure above him and how it's going to be set up in terms of signing players, scouting players, negotiating contracts. A lot of heads have rolled there recently. And I just hope that Manchester United give him the staff, the scouting network, the people above him that will implement his plan off the pitch while he's busy away working on the training ground, because that probably has been the disconnect there with Manchester United, that people have made football decisions that aren't really football related, and obviously this guy comes with a track record. He seems to tick every box, but nothing will change unless the structure off it changes, if you understand what I'm saying.
I think it should be celebrated that Damien's got almost 2 hours into the show without.
It was a good show. It was great debate.
Without being asked to sort of like inflame Manchester United fans.
Yeah, well, that just probably shows where Man United are.
That's an achievement. Yeah, that's good.
I feel sorry for them. That's what it is.
That's sympathy.
Yeah, but it just shows where they are, because obviously City, Liverpool, these are the clubs that. I know it is true. It is and I think the Ten Hag thing will hopefully give the story a little bit of a new life. It actually is going to be very interesting. Could I just say, the Championship conclusion was very boring today, very quickly. So then in League Two, you have a situation where, what was it? Was it Argentina beat Peru, a load of goals in 1978? So Henry Kissinger in the dressing room.
Yeah. So Bristol Rovers started the day with a bad goal difference situation to get promoted. So Northampton are 3-1 up against Barrow, and they're like, Northampton are up because their goal difference at the start of the day was something like 4 better, I think, than Bristol Rovers, or 5 better. Bristol Rovers have now gone 7-0 up against Scunthorpe. They've scored 7 goals, and then now suddenly they've gone into the automatic promotion spot ahead of Northampton. I think they're going to go up on goals scored as it stands, so 7-0. With goals in the 76th, 79th, 85th minute. So it's going into injury time. So I'm
looking at the table here, Dan. They're now level on goal difference. Bristol are ahead of Northampton on goals scored. They're both on plus 22.
You're a couple of nerds. How did you know this was in the mix?
I was looking at following the live score League 2 just to see what was going on, because the Championship is normally brilliant, but it was quite dull today.
Yeah.
But I just saw some people commenting about it. But 7 goals. Now Scunthorpe are the worst team in the league, so they have been relegated to the conference because of that. So it's not as if there's some sort of skullduggery, like they are a per side. But that's a mad last stage. Northampton, you're 3-0 up after a few minutes. You think your job is done, and then
You're in the playoffs.
You hear this coming through, yeah. That's
Joey Barton as well. Am I right in saying?
Is Joey Barton Bristol Rovers? Is he?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Oh, I think you're right. Actually,
Look forward to that press conference.
oh god,
That'd be delightful.
always the good guys winning, isn't it? It's always the good guys.
Yeah. Forest Green Rovers, Exeter, and Bristol Rovers set to go up with Northampton, Port Vale, Swindon, and Mansfield Town in the playoff spots. Yeah, so that's what's going on there. Glenn Whelan is playing for Bristol Rovers.
Yeah, Trevor Clark as well, who's one of the early members of the Stephen Bradley sort of Shamrock Rovers era. He's involved there too. So yeah, Glenn Whelan, of course. Yeah.
Great chat today, Damien Delaney, Shane Keegan. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, lads.
Cheers, lads.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I remember we're on air until 8 o'clock this evening because we are showcasing live and exclusive commentary of Leinster against Leicester in the Champions Cup. The match kicking off at 5:30 at Welford Road. But at the moment, Munster are playing Toulouse at Lansdowne Road. It's very tight into the last 10 minutes. Adam Quinlan.
John, my nerves are shot. Munster hanging on for dear life, defending incredibly well. A couple of minutes ago, Mathis Labelle got a brilliant try. You said it, I was listening to you. Little inside pass. Mo Vaca spins around off the back of a line out. Inside pass, great footwork try. 24-21, and for the last 5 or 6 minutes, Munster defending courageously. Their work at the breakdown has just been phenomenal. You can hear the crowd now are getting behind them. 74 minutes gone. They just need to get... Toulouse have got a penalty off the scrum. This is a kickable penalty, whether they'll go to the corner or not. But that power from the scrum that came in the first half just turned Munster over in the scrum there after some brilliant defensive work from Munster. And Toulouse patting each other on the back. That power again telling, and Thomas Ramos is going to have a shot at goal. It's just outside the 15-yard line on the 22. You would think fairly kickable for him. Munster had to put into the scrum. Toulouse just marched him forward. It spun around. Luke Pearce gave him the penalty. So crowd gone quiet again.
Okay. All right, Quinny. We'll come back to you after the break. Munster 24, Toulouse 21. Toulouse have a penalty, 74 minutes, 48 seconds on the watch at Lansdowne Road. With the fields of Athenry coming through the speakers, put a shiver down anybody's spine here who's listening to Off the Ball here on News Talk. So in the Premier League, we've had Brentford, Southampton finished 3-0 to Brentford. Burnley losing 3-1 to Aston Villa. Into stoppage time, it is Chelsea 2, Wolves 1 and Crystal Palace 1, Watford 0 going into the closing stages of that match at Selhurst Park. Remember, we're on air till 8 o'clock this evening for Munster, and the ball has gone up between the posts. Munster 24, Toulouse 24, they're level. We're back after the news.
Listen.